You have a plan, though, David Davis. You have a plan that you think can restart the party and see Boris re-elected if he were to stick with it. So run me through what you're proposing.
Frankly, it's pretty simple. I mean, it starts with that most conservative thing of having low taxes. It is, after all, what we promised in the election, right? And what's happened is we've been driven off our course by COVID and a variety of things, but principally COVID, and all the economic impacts and trade impacts and so on. Now, first thing, therefore, is to start cutting, is to reverse, not cut taxes, to reverse tax increases we put through. We shouldn't have put NICs through. We shouldn't have put the increase in national insurance through. We shouldn't be putting through an increase in corporation tax. Why not? Because we're actually collecting more taxes than we ever have before, partly because we're growing faster than anybody forecast, or we were until last month, and partly because of what they call fiscal drag, which means basically, as inflation comes along, you don't get your tax allowance increased, you still pay. So as your wages go up, you pay more and more taxes. So those things have meant we've got vast amounts of money. We've got about 90 billion more. Remember, all this was about raising 12 billion? We've got 90 billion more than we expected. So put that right first. Why? Well, number one, cost of living crisis. It solves that. It doesn't solve it outright, but it does a great deal to solve it. Number two, and actually more fundamental almost, is it, if we carry on as we are, we're going to stop our growth rate. And we've been saying it. People like me, people like John Redwood, have been saying this for a year now. And bingo, last month the figures proved it. So that's the first thing.
Stop pretending to be a low-tax party and actually be a low-tax party.
Absolutely.
What about housing, though?
Well,
that's another huge issue.
Then you come down to basically three other big issues in my mind. What I'm looking at really are the big issues that people worry about. Yeah. Now, when I was in my 20s, 65%, nearly two-thirds of my generation bought their own home. Now it's a quarter.
Shocking.
You know? And the rents you pay, if you don't, enormous rents people have to pay. So they've got no chance of saving up the money to buy their own home. Now, why is that? Well, because population's increased by about 7 million, and so we're about 1 million short in number of houses, and about 100,000 houses a year short too. Now, what happens? If you try and do that, people say, I don't want you building next to my house. I don't want you building next to my village. I don't want you taking up my green space. Well, why don't we start building garden villages and garden towns? If you took a helicopter across the United Kingdom, as I have to do too often, if you take a helicopter, it's like flying over a golf course. Most of it's not urban, you know. You could actually do that. And if you did that and you allocated, let's say, 1,000 acres here, and you make a lot of money on the increase in value. Massive. Like that. Yeah? And some of it will go to the landowner, of course, but a chunk of it should go to paying for the community centre and
we'll get those houses we so desperately need.
All those services.
Without upsetting the NIMBYs.
Without upsetting the NIMBYs. You create new houses, they will be bigger. At the moment, our houses built today are half the size they were built in the 20s.
Oh, I know.
And they're the smallest in Europe.
Yeah.
So you can have bigger, cheaper, better houses with good services. What's not to like about that? So that's housing. Then you've got education. When I was at school, this country had the highest social mobility pretty much in the world. Now, we're about the lowest, along with the Americans. What's the big thing there? It's education. And I think we need to completely start re-engineer the classrooms. Because today, if you look at children at the age of 11, half of the children from free school meal homes, which is one measure of poor homes, half of them are failed by the time they're 11. They haven't got good enough English or good enough maths to do all the other subjects. We can't let that go on. So it's a question of really, and we've got lots of technology now, AI technology, screens for kids and so on, give them the best possible lectures, diagnostic tests, there's loads of things can be done there. So that's the second thing, And the third thing, frankly, and this is the one that will cause negative reaction, I think, in some quarters, is I think we should be addressing the complete reform of the health service. I mean, it's always been, Tories have been afraid of this subject because people say, you're trying to privatise it. No, we're not. I want free at the point delivery. But, Germany has free at the point delivery. France has free, and Austria and Sweden, but they have better cancer care results than others. Yes. They have lesser queues than we do. They have better coronary care. And so all of these things we should be aiming to get for our people. And I think there is now a sort of gap, as it were, in the market, in the political market. I think because people can't get to see their GPs, because they're queuing up to get cancer care, because their tests have been late and so they may die before they get treated. I've had a couple of those cases in my own constituency. There is an appetite to think about this again. We now spend...
honest conversation about the
honest
NHS.
conversation. We already spend more than the OECD average on our healthcare now. Not quite as much as France and Germany, but we're catching up.
And we get worse results. That is
get worse results for more money.